Hello, I'm David Sables, and this is the Sell and Negotiate podcast. Now, we've talked about selling and negotiation, the difference today, just a little bit more on a fundamental area of selling. So, when you're trying to understand your customer, the very first rule, understand your customer so that you can communicate relevant knowledge, relevant things about your proposal to them. It calls into question, do you have the skills to do that? Do you have the ability to understand your customer? Simplest way to understand the customer, and there are many ways. I mean, you can read about them, you can look them up on the web, you can check their website, look at what their goals, etc. are. Of course, you can actually ask other suppliers to that customer whether they deal with them fairly or how they think that works. Many different sources of information, even just getting their annual accounts and reading them through. You know, that's worth actually having a share in a customer. There's a thought. Make sure you get invited to the various meetings that take place as shareholders, and you can find out about a customer in many ways. But you know, the easy and obvious and best way is to simply ask them questions and listen to their answers. So this is a very, very well told story, no doubt, but I want to change it, really, because I think that even though this is probably the most trained technique within selling, I think it's probably one of the areas that people most often get wrong. Look, everybody's getting things wrong all of the time, but with this subject, I think it's glaring. So people go on programs and they want to know more about how to question. Odd, sort of don't trust themselves to ask the right questions, but you end up on a program, a training course, understanding something about dimensional questions or spatial questions, and really it's a little bit more simple than that. You know, I don't want to get into all sorts of... You don't want to be thinking about that when you're talking to it. You want to be having a natural conversation with somebody that you'd like to do business with. And so you want to ask, just have a couple of things on your mind to make sure you've got a checklist of questions that you can get through and that you do it in the right way. One thing I do like, and I've no doubt you've absolutely heard 100 times, and you know, but we'll refresh on it just now. Why not? Is the subject of open and closed questions. So asking questions sometimes which allow people to talk. It requires them to talk. So that would be an open question. A closed one just is looking for a yes or a no from the customer. Now, to catch you out, I'd probably ask that good old training technique is to say which is the best. And the answer is, of course, well, everybody says open questions because it's like you need to get to know more information, don't you? But no, that's not the answer, and clearly neither is closed questions. The answer is a combination of both, where you're using both questions in the right way. And this is basic selling approach, but there's nothing wrong with this. This is actually very, very good technique. I just want to build on it. I want to build on it for you because I think that there's more to it than that. And actually, when you're just dealing with open and closed questions, you fall into a bit of a trap with many professional buyers especially. So on open questions, you're really looking at something that starts with what, where, why, when, how. These sorts of questions will cause people to need to talk. If you, on the other hand, offer them a question that starts with do you, for example, you're looking then for a yes or a no. And the reason that they both need to work together is because typically what you do is you start talking to them with more open questions, and then when you're looking for a point of clarification, you need a yes or a no. So, is this how you will get you a yes or a no? And understanding and being mindful of the fact that whether you're actually getting somebody to talk because you want them to talk, or getting them to give you a clarification because that's what you need at this point in time, is extremely useful. And I often think this if I'm speaking to a child, especially if you're speaking to a child on the phone, and you say to them, "Have you had a good day?" And they say yes. Is it fun at school? Yes or no. You end up into these things where you're doing all of the talking and they're just giving you the yes or the no. And when I find myself in that situation, I say the word what, and then I think of the question, so that I know it's going to be a question that starts with a what. It says, what did you do at school? Oh, okay, fine. Now they've got to tell me something. Well, they can still avoid that, as you know. So that's the open and closed questions. The other basic knowledge thing that you have to do is, of course, funnel your questions. You might very well have heard of this technique before. So typically what you're doing is you start with an open question, and as you're getting into something that's useful, that applies to your proposal, and you're getting to something that you can use to hook onto with your customer, you're starting to look for clarification of that fact. You start more open and you get more closed before you actually move on to another funnel. But what's important with this is listening to the answer they give you, so that your next question is relevant to the answer they give you. Look, I said before about having a list. I mean, it's important to know the sort of areas you want to question on, but it is also quite important that you don't just work your way through a list, because there's a temptation then to move on to a question before you've really got to something that's useful to you, and before you've clarified exactly what they mean. So it's far more important to listen carefully and then funnel down, asking another relevant question to the answer that's been given to the previous one. I've got to say, actually, buyers do like that. They like that because it gives the impression to them that you are actually listening to what they've said, because you've asked a relevant question to the answer that they gave you beforehand. So, two techniques that we love, good, nice foundation skills of open and closed questions and funneling. Here's the build. The problem with everything I've seen trained on questioning and listening is that there's a belief that's out there that you approach a customer meeting and it's essential to just get people talking at the beginning of it. Now, I've got to say that can ignore the fundamental need of a buyer, which might be to speed up and get through it a little bit more quickly, get to the point and get out of here because I'm actually busy. So by doing this whole open question and find out more and you might actually be driving them nuts. And we see this a lot, okay, from the people who work within Sentinel and the buying teams in the past. You know, that is one of the pet hates, is when people come in and it's like you can so tell that people have been on a training course telling them to ask these sorts of open questions. So look, you definitely have to open up with questioning, and you have to understand what those needs are that you're going to sell to. And even if you know what they are, you have to get people to say it so that it's relevant when you sell to it in a minute's time. So I just want to change a little bit the terminology, and it's my preferred terminology. It's not open and closed. It's a different thing. It's route one, or it's exploratory. Are you trying to find out new information? Do you have permission in today's meeting with this amount of time to actually find out new information at all? If that's the case, then of course it's a good thing, because what you can do is you can find out more about your customer, and that's got to be good. It's not always like that, though. And the truth is that if you really want a buyer to tell you that there is a particular need, which is, let's just say, low early investment for my proposal to help with cash flow. So low upfront investment. And the best way to get them to say that, so that you can then show them how your proposal achieves that for them, is just simply to ask them. So tell me, low upfront investment, that's important to you, right? And they will say yes. of course, and then you have got them to say that, and you can move on. I do think, by the way, that in this early stage of selling, it's really important that if you've gone that route one technique of just asking somebody what is a closed question, that one was a closed question, but it's the quickest way to get them to say the thing that you want them to say. It also avoids that risk of saying, so what are the financial and cash flow requirements that you have within your business? Tell me about those. There's an open question for you, but they might just tell you the wrong thing, and they could talk for 20 minutes on that, and it doesn't help you in your sell. So open and closed is good to remember, okay, the different types of questions, but route one means point them to the area that you want them to talk about, and the quickest way to get them to say the answer is a closed route one question. Is this important to you? The answer is yes, bang, you're in. The answer is no, then you know you're not in, and you're going to have to take another angle. Maybe your proposal was wrong in that case if you've designed it to actually achieve something that isn't a need. You can, of course, go slightly further back up that funnel and ask a question which is pointing them in the right direction, but it's still open. So tell me more about how you achieve positive cash flow within the business and how you look for suppliers to help with that. Now that is a route one question, but it's an open one. They're going to have to tell you a little bit more, and that might be the information you're looking for. So that is just a route one to something that helps you to sell the proposal. Or remember the other technique, exploratory. That's when you've got more time to investigate the customer, get closer to them, but that requires the luxury of the person on the other side of the table being prepared to talk to you a little more. Okay, so questioning and listening. Little extra take on it, moving your open and closed questions and your funneling, adding to that the concept of route one and exploratory questioning. Good luck with that. Speak to you soon.